Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has harem with Ino Hinata and Kin Pokemon. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by NeonZangetsu and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Plate. Dear Diary. Well, this is it. Today's the day. Finally, after all these years, I'm going to graduate and get a Pokemon partner. For real this time. Definitely I'm not going to screw this up. I've got it all down. I can usually handle everything they throw at me, and this year I've spent months practicing that damned Bushin technique, and I know for a fact that I've finally got the damn thing down, I think. No, I can't think like that. Positive thoughts, Databeo. You can do this, Naruto. I can do it. Those damned bastards at the academy won't be able to fail this time, they'll be too busy bowing before my greatness. Unless I mess up. No. I won't. I hope it'll be orange. Well, if it's not, that's alright, I guess. Still, orange would be cool. I've already failed so many times now, I don't think I'll be able to stand it if I fail Ano. Crap. Irika-sensei's calling me to the front. Which means it's my turn. Here goes nothing. You pass. What? Naruto's eyes, once squeezed shut in fear and anticipation, now snapped open with such force he was certain he'd burst a blood vessel. Irika's pleasant declaration ran through the air, echoed by his own partner, Explode. The massive Pokemon uttered a sharp whistle of approval through the air tubes in the back of its skull, rumbling its name in congratulation. Naruto barely heard the loud Pokemon. He found he was still looking at his clone. A bit pale, perhaps, but an otherwise flawless copy of himself. It was even grinning. Just like him. Naruto's jaw hung open, ready to fall off at any moment. Why, you mean I passed, Irika-sensei? The boy stammered out, quietly fearing this was a dream. If it was, he didn't want to wake up. Not now, not ever. Only just. The scarred teacher admonished him with a smile, making a small pinching gesture with his fingers. But a passing grade is a passing grade. Congratulations, Naruto. Mizuki swore quietly. Damn it. How in the hell had the brat passed? He'd been dead last in the class. And yet, that Bunshin was almost perfect. Damn, now he'd have to revise his plans. If he could even salvage them at all. Stupid fox brat. Quietly seething, he forced his face into a mask of impassivity, as his fellow instructor reached down and offered the boy his much-desired reward. Here you go, kiddo. Distracted as he was by the inexplicable incredible results of the test, the blonde missed the dark curse uttered by the plotting Chunin. Just as well, he was far too busy staring, gawping really, as Irika happily dropped the Arceus plate landed in his hand. Fumbling, the blonde caught at it, marveling at the strange design. Warm to the touch, yet strangely cool, it felt alive in his hands. Like a tiny heartbeat. He clutched it close to him, a faint grin adorning his whiskered features. We'll see you in 2 days' time for the graduation ceremony, Naruto. All of reality caught up with the boy at once. This wasn't a dream. This was real. Which meant. In the end, his overloaded mind did the only thing it could think to do. Thump. He fainted. Meanwhile, somewhere between the realm of time and space, Arceus was confused, to say the least. Having observed Naruto Uzumaki for some time now, he found the boy's mind was a fluctuating mess of wild enthusiasm and quiet pain, with a bit of ramen thrown in for good measure. No, scratch that. Lots of ramen. It was all the boy seemed to think about sometimes, when he wasn't dwelling on his dream to better himself and become Hokage. Concerning the others, those potential genin, he was at least able to get some sense of who would best suit them in their future quest. But this boy? Problematic. Orange, he'd said. That didn't narrow it down by much. For the life of him, the equine Pokemon simply couldn't fathom who to partner him with. Surely the desert princes, the Larvitar, were simply out of the question. He didn't think a water type would be suitable for the lad, either. He was all fierce actions and fire. Honestly, he was rather tempted just to give the boy a fire type and be done with it. Then he considered the propensity for destruction the boy's tenant had and wondered if that was a wise choice either. But what then? What potential partner could possibly suit this brash, hyperactive, knuckle-headed ninja? Unbidden, an idea formed in the back of his mind. A silent thought to the plate now clutched tight between the boy's fingers despite his slumbering state was all it took. And then it was done. The god of Pokemon wondered if he should pray to himself, having just made this decision. Eggs anyone? Dear Diary. I passed. Databao. Ha ha. I can't believe it. Who says hard work can't get you places, eh? Everyone who ever mocked me can go suuak it. It feels so good to write that. I'm gonna be a fucking ninja. One who curses a lot, apparently. Bah, who cares? I am a shinobi. I am Nechan treated me to a huge bowl of ramen. Then she told me I get to eat for free for the rest of the week. Is this a dream? If it is, I don't want to wake up. Alright, calm down, Naruto. So, I got my plate finally. Now I just gotta wait. I hate waiting. Meanwhile. Oh, no. No. Hell no. Fuck no. I ain't doing it, old man. You can't make me, you hear? Sarutobi remained expressionless as one Mitarashi Anko raged through his office, flinging books and bookcases alike, trench coat flaring like a cape behind her. The weathered Kage took it all in stride, waiting for the special jounin to vent the full extent of her anger before he spike. Even he knew better than to interrupt the mistress of torture when she was on a tear like this. Anyone else would have been tried and court-martialed for such blatant disobedience. That she got a pass at all had no more to do with her painful past than a massive amount of patience on Hiruzen's part. What was the cause of her apocalyptic rage, you ask? It might have something to do with her recent promotion to jounin. That, and the students she'd been subsequently slapped with. You can't do this to me, Anko cried, slamming her open palms against his desk. You can't. They don't even have their Pokemon, yet. They soon will, and yes, I can. Hiruzen answered, taking a long, slow drag of his pipe. It's already done. I expect you to treat Naruto-kun with dignity and respect. But why me? She squawked. I thought Kakashi was going to get the brat. He was. Sarutobi replied, exhaling a thin ring of smoke. Then I decided we'd mix things up this year. Naruto has already exceeded everyone's expectations by passing in the first place. Why not take it a step further? Tilting his head, he spared the waxing a rueful glance. If we are to survive as a village, we must learn to change with the times, not remain stagnant. We must learn to adapt. And where better to start than with this year and its graduating class? The teams have been rearranged. And this is your idea of mixing things up? Eh? I'd rather go without Dango. Is that so? Anko went pale. And then now wait just a second. The words poured out of her in a rush. I didn't mean that. I think you did. The elderly leader disagreed, turning to his right. Wouldn't you say Blaziken? Blaziken chuffed its name with quiet laughter from its customary perch near the windowsill, broad shoulders shaking in an ultimately futile effort to contain its mirth. It was only through a supreme effort of will that the aging Kage didn't mirror his old friend's reaction and start laughing himself. Anko turned a withering glare on the Pokemon in question, and the fire/flying type only snorted all the louder. Shush, Feathers. The Pokemon offered a mute shrug and the hazel-eyed woman frantically turned her gaze back to the Hokage. Look, give me any other assignment. If it's torture, I'm your girl. Just point me at another traitor like Mizuki. I can smell him. We still don't have proof of his intent or wrongdoing. We didn't until I got my hands on him. Anko interjected with a snarl. Then he sang like a damn canary. My point is, I'm not a nice person. I like to play with knives and fire. I enjoy terrorizing the hell out of people. I teach torture sessions on Tuesdays. This? Her lips pursed, fighting a tremble. I'm going to fuck it up. I just know it. My order stands. I can't do this, Hokage-sama. She reiterated, voice dropping, despairing. Look, I'm broken. After what he did to me, can't teach a bunch of rugrats. I don't have it in me, and even if I did, I'm not one to hold back. Hazel eyes took on a decidedly misty look. I'll either drive them mad, break them, or get them killed. I'm not sure which is worse. Please don't do this. Hiruzen snuffed out his pipe and set it aside. That's precisely why I'm assigning them to you. Anko sniffed, incredulous. What? 2 of them have been through unbelievable torment to stand where they are now, just as you have. The third you likely won't have to worry about. When she refused to reply, he decided to sweeten the matter. I'll give you a year's supply of dango if you at least consider it. More if you'll take them on. Say what you would about Mitarashi Enko, but she was never one to deny her sweet tooth. Fine. She scowled, straightening up. But if this is Naruto we're talking about, forget being his sensei. If I'm really going to mentor the little shit, I want to test him. How do you plan to do that, pray tell? The fire shadow frowned. You'll find he's quite stubborn. I dare say even more than you. Anko Mitra chagrined. It was all teeth. We'll see. Some hours later, in Naruto's apartment, Naruto watched the plate like a proud papa hawk. Part of him half expected it to disappear outright when he wasn't looking, or worse, that someone would break in and steal it. His beloved door had withstood every assault against it thus far still, who knew? But back to the plate, his precious, well-guarded plate. It had adopted a strange orange-black hue shortly after he'd brought it home, which though slightly disturbing in its own right wasn't all that worrying for out-favorite blonde all things considered. Now that he'd received his favorite color he couldn't be more pleased. Orange was orange, after all. So, as time marched ever onward, he found himself more and more drawn to the thought of just who his partner would be. Having no way of knowing his unintentional prayers had already been answered, he focused all of his thoughts on what kind of partner he might have, pausing only when his basic bodily functions demanded otherwise. He even slept with the thing. Not once did he let it out of sight, if only for fear that someone had reason to swipe it out from under his nose. Nobody was taking his partner, Databeo. He maintained his determined vigil for what felt like an eternity. We'll see you in 2 days' time for the graduation ceremony, Naruto. That had been more than a day and a half ago. As a result, he was still quite busy pondering the plate when a sharp crack echoed against his door. Once, twice, thrice. 3 rapid, heavy knocks in quick succession, one after the other. Naruto nearly jumped clear out of his skin but wasn't quick enough. His guest was already rattling door's knob by the time he crossed the room. Grimacing at the ungodly ruckus, he unlocked his beloved barrier and flung the shaking frame open with a quick shove, resolved to give them a piece of his mind. "Whaddya want?" His voice trailed off into a small squeak as he beheld the aggravated knocker. A faceless Umbu stared back and down at him, their expressionless visage lurking behind a dragon mask. Or it could have been a snake of some sort. Naruto wasn't paying much attention. Add to that the waning light from the setting sun behind him and the buxom woman looked positively menacing. The only real clue to their identity was the spiky mess of purple hair that even the far-reaching mask couldn't quite conceal. Had he paused to consider that, he might have actually discerned her identity right then and there. Alas, he was too busy trying to discern if this particular Umbu was another one of his tormentors come to make his life a living hell, or simply the real deal. Uzumaki Naruto. Her voice intoned with all the solemnity of an immovable stylix, it is time for the ceremony. Well, that settled that now, didn't it? You can always give up if you're not ready. The Umbu offered suddenly, startling him. There's no shame in admitting it. Naruto bristled. Like hell I will, Databeo, he cried, thrusting his finger forward in fierce defiance. I trained my entire life for this. I'm ready. I said I was. I'm going to be the Hokage someday. And the Hokage never goes back on his word. That's my ninja way. The masked woman stiffened at the harsh declaration, if only because he'd taken to poking her stomach with said finger. The laughter, when it came, was so unexpected that he actually yelped, and shrank back. Bahahaha. Oh, he was right about you. It emerged as a disbelieving howl, a bark of sheer mirth that had the woman physically holding her sides. What the hell? He cried. Why were you laughing, oh? No reason, she replied, her words dripping with sweet sarcasm. I suggest you hold onto your hat, though, Hokage-sama. Wait a minute, I don't have ACK. The Umbu's hand closed around his shoulder before he could finish, followed by a rapid body flicker that sent his insides roiling like a buoy in a storm-tossed sea. Up, down, left, right, north, south, east, all direction lost meaning to him as the world shifted and spun time and time again. When reality finally stopped spiraling and allowed him to see something other than an ever-shifting wall of leaves, the genin-to-be practically was very, very ready to throw himself towards it. Imagine his surprise then, when his Umbu escort simply let him go. Fighting his rising gorge, Naruto stumbled out of his guide's grasp. Ouch! And nearly slammed headfirst into a nearby post. Someone had gone to great lengths to turn the training ground, if could even be called such anymore, into something far more formidable. The ground had long since been stripped bare of grass right down to the very last blade, and a large stack of unlit wood, a bonfire of some sort, awaited him in the center. Posts, like the very one he'd nearly cracked his head on just now, stood jammed into the soil at odd intervals, the purpose of which eluded him completely. Positioned before said bonfire stood none other than the Hokage himself in all his robed glory, a look of quiet pride etched into his wrinkled features, as were those of the seemingly ever-stoic advisors who flanked him. Neither of the trio would meet his gaze. Naruto gulped quietly, suddenly aware that he was the first to arrive. Where was everyone else? There you are! For the second time that day, the last Uzumaki found himself upended, this time by a sudden headlock from behind. Dragged backwards, the blonde scrabbled furiously at the arm holding him, fingers clawing at the gray cloth, only for it to fall away not a moment later, spinning him like a top. Disoriented by the abrupt spin, he shot its owner a dark glower. What the hell, Kiba? Look at you! The Inuzuka grinned, shaking off his snarl with a laugh. You're actually here. I can't believe you passed. Right, Akamaru? The puppy yipped a greeting atop his partner's head, tail wagging happily. Yeah, Naruto found himself scratching the back of his head, me either. The feral boy elbowed him conspiratorially. Hinata's got something to tell you, too. She does? Naruto blinked, more than a little surprised to find that the shy Hyuga had in fact been hiding behind Kiba the entire time. Huh. Hinata hardly ever spoke to him. Wonder what she had to say. Well, he'd soon find out. As he looked on, the Inuzuka wrangled her out and away from his back, ushering her forward with all the stubbornness of a nosy best friend. Tell him, Hinata. Tell me what? The shy heiress turned beet red beneath the gaze of her crush. See, congratulations, Naruto-kun. She stammered out, tenting her fingers. I'm glad you passed. Of course I did. He grinned, thumbing his nose. And I'll be Hokage before long, just you wait and see. A faint smile blossomed on her face. To look forward to it. Gravitating towards the rest of the newcomers as they arrived, Naruto soon discovered something else. In passing the test by his own merits, he not only earned their recognition, but praise as well. It was the first manner of positive attention he'd received in a very long time. Few were quite as vocal in their congratulations as Kiba had been, but the mere fact that they didn't shy away was more than enough for him. Even the team offered a short grunt in the way of acknowledgement. In Sasuke's that was as good as a pat on the back. Not Sakura, though. She barely even glanced at him. As ever, that simple rejection stung more than words ever could. This time, however, the pain was sharp. More poignant. Why did he bother with her, he wondered. What was the point in trying to get her attention when all she ever did was push him away? Or hit him? At least the others didn't outright turn him away with blows. Why was he even thinking about this? Shaking of the disturbingly dark thought, the prankster struggled to reorient himself as best he could and avoid the pinkette's gaze. Thankfully, however, the time finally came that the rest of the students arrived and they could commence, and Naruto thrust aside that brief pang and turned his attention to the old man. Welcome, Sarutobi coughed into a clenched fist, clearing his throat to garner their attention, to this most sacred of ceremonies. Here each you stand, chosen by Arceus himself, to speak with him, and move on to the next stage in your lives as ninja. When I call your name, please come forward, present your Arceus plate, and move to the area past him to await the next phase. If for any reason you lack a plate, you will be returned to your homes forthwith and given a second chance in a few weeks once we determine the reason and correct it, of course. Having given his instructions, the third Hokage stepped back, withdrew a scroll from his voluminous sleeve, and began to rattle off a list of names forthwith. Now let's see. Name after name was rattled off, one by one. Naruto listened attentively, patiently waiting for his own. When he actually called his name, however, he still nearly jumped. Hurrying up to the Kage, he reached into his pouch and offered his plate. Present your plate to your escort, Sarutobi instructed, before he could give it to him. Naruto nearly came up short. Escort? That'd be me, brat. The Umbu who'd first escorted him to the ceremony stepped forward, removing her mask. Hazel eyes and a grin one that was far too wide for his liking greeted him, all framed by wild violet hair. He nearly flinched when she beckoned at him, offering a hand in exchange for his precious plate. He had to give the plate to this crazy woman? How did he know she wouldn't just steal it? Or anyone who just burst out into maniacal laughter like that clearly wasn't right in the head. We don't have all day, she reminded him. Hesitantly, he did so. In exchange, she handed him a headband. His headband. All smooth and glittering metal, it bore the symbol of the village. His village. His. Ah. He felt like dancing again. Less so when the damn crazy lady decided to ruffle his hair. Congratulations, kid. Naruto cradled it reverently nevertheless, and all but sprinted back to his place in the crowd of potential genin. Now, the Hokage called after him with a raised voice, startling some, we come to the final part of our ceremony. He'd barely gotten the last word out before the bonfire burst into life in a roaring column of flame. He'd heard all tell of the legendary Pokemon allied with Konoha. Moltres and Ho were most prominent, of course, being beings of living flame, but there were others, many of whom he didn't even know nor recognize from the lessons at all. And he was about to meet one. Just the thought made him want to dance. This was going to be great. He couldn't wait. Before their very eyes, the already raging inferno gathered into a spiraling twister, fire spin, nigh but blinding all genin and even a few jounin who dared to peer into his depths. A deep, thunderous voice resonated from within. Greetings, mortals. When Naruto was finally able to look again, when the flame finally allowed it, he found himself a bit flabbergasted. This was not Moltres. It was not Ho. If anything, it looked like a very large, shaggy dog with a brown coat. A dog with spikes on his back, a red gold crest on its face, and eyes like wildfire. Yet there was a strange sense of regality about this proud creature, an aura of pride he couldn't understand. Punctual as ever, Sarutobi declared with a faint smile. Allow me to introduce Entei, one of the legendary beasts. Think of him as Arceus's personal envoy to the leaf. Towering at nearly 7 feet, the mighty Entei dwarfed all present in sheer height alone, the Hokage included. Bathed in flames that swirled and banked around its feet, scorching the barren earth with each step. Naruto found he understood the reason why the grass had been stripped away in that instant. Had it been present, the legendary would have easily started a flash fire. Still, to see an actual legendary Pokemon, just standing there. You who remain, Entei rumbled deeply, its russet red eyes sweeping over each in turn, I offer my congratulations. Now, as per our pact, it falls to me to deliver the gift of our alliance. Be true to yourselves as you always have, and those of Pokekind will ever stand beside you. But as we remember our allies, so too do we our enemies. Treat your allies well as you would your kith and kin. Harm our kind only when absolutely necessary and never strive to dominate another being. Remember this well, and remember that Lord Arceus is always watching. Unbidden, Naruto found himself nodding, his head bobbing in silent agreement. As if sensing his very curiosity, the creature padded forward calmly towards him. Any curiosity and talkativeness on his part vanished as the great, flaming beast turned its gaze upon him, then his jaw clamped itself firmly shut, blue eyes widening at the sight of the regal entity towering over him like a looming eruption. It felt as though his very life could be snuffed out in an instant. Despite the growing seed of fear in his gut, he willed himself to meet the legendary's eyes and refused to back down. At length, his resolve appeared to appease the volcanic Pokemon. Or at the very least, amuse him. Now then, came the bass rumble. I deem thee worthy. A wall of napalm shot forth across the gathering as the legendary vanished in another spiral of flame, forcing a near-collective flinch from the assembled genin. But instead of searing agony, all that followed was a gentle warmth, the gentle heat of a setting sun. Before each of them and between the still-roaring fire lay their prize. Each flinched slightly as a searing pain registered in their right arm as they reached for it, the runes of the pact etching themselves into their flesh with unbreakable ink. Each held their tongue as the last mark formed, the true visible sign of their eternal pact with their partner. None dared to speak into the reverent silence that followed. Each lifted their eggs with the utmost of care, cradling their partners to be with gentleness, and care, and quiet wonder. Until a faint inquiry pierced the gloom. Guys? Why do I have 2 eggs? Somewhere between the realm of time and space. Arceus was nearly beside himself with laughter. It had been many years indeed since he thought to bestow not 1, but 2 partners upon a child of the leaf. Of course, he could sense the boy's shocked skepticism, but beneath he could detect a quiet pride, coupled with an equally fierce determination to keep his partner plural, safe and sound. So too could he feel the confusion of the other genin, muffled bursts of awe quickly smothered by jealousy. Their anger was something to be expected. After all, such a phenomenon was rather unheard of in the land of fire in this day and age, having occurred only once before at the dawn of the village's founding. What would Senju Hashirama think of his successor to be following him down that path? It had been a stroke of genius on his part, if he said so himself. Twin eggs were rare indeed in Konoha, but not all entirely uncommon in other parts of the world. Especially when one paused to consider it. Unbeknownst to them, this very occurrence had taken place in distant lands such like Kumo and other far-flung villages across the sea. He'd done the same some years back for the young man who would one day become the container to the Hachibi. Why not this boy, who'd fought and scraped and clawed to get where he was today? Regardless, he was certain this pair would prove most faithful to the boy. Definitely. Maybe. Hopefully? The next morning. 2. Naruto had 2 eggs. That meant 2 partners. Veritably giddy with glee, the young blonde found that sleep eluded him that night. It was just as well. He was far too busy building a cozy little nest despite Gigi's reassurances that the eggs didn't require one anyway. It was little more than a small, ramshackle thing fashioned out of torn shirts and ruined sheets, but he was determined to make it as comfortable for his future allies. He'd even torn apart one of his pillows in a vain attempt to further insulate the artificial nest as best he could. He took the moment to gaze at them, marveling at them as they caught the early rays of morning. He grinned to himself. I can't wait. One was dark as night itself, and blazoned with eerie red swirls near the base. Its companion was a striking orange hue, with cream-colored highlights, except these curled around the top portion of the egg rather than the bottom of it. Were they twins of some sort? He wondered at that. What would they be? What would they look like? Would they like him? He was certain he'd like them. It didn't matter who they were. They were his partners. Just the thought of it made him giddy all again. 2. Everyone else had only been graced with 1. That only made him even more special. He'd even caught the team glaring at him. At this rate he'd reach his dream in no time. Alas, a sharp knock cut through his short-lived fantasy. Grumbling at the interruption, the boy darted away from the nest, thought not without a quick glance back to make sure he hadn't missed anything, and flung the door open. He half expected to find Irika-sensei there, if only to check up on him. He couldn't have been more wrong. Revealed was the unmasked woman from last night, his tormentor devoid of the uniform and armor she'd been wearing. In fact, she wasn't wearing much at all, unless fishnet and a trench coat counted, which in Naruto's opinion they didn't. She flashed a cheery grin at his scowl. Yo! You! Me. The perplet saluted merrily. Came to check on ya. Did your eggs hatch yet? Naruto promptly tried to close door in her face. Hey! She growled, thrusting her foot into the gap before he could escape. Don't be like that, brat. I woke up early just to see you. You should be grateful. Naruto was most assuredly not grateful. You're crazy. Go away. Come on now, OW. With a sudden burst of strength he stomped down on the Jounin's foot, forcing her to retract her heel with a hiss of pain. Door swung shut moments later, locked from the other side. For a fleeting second, Enko actually considered just knocking the damn thing down, but no, that was going entirely against the purpose of her visit. Damn kid. She had come here to try and be supportive, but after last night's fiasco, she wasn't surprised by the boy's vehement reaction. In the end she came back with Irika, and even then Naruto was reluctant to let her in. Only after much cajoling and the promise of a trip to Ichiraku's did the boy budge. And even then he kept watching her, firmly planting himself between her and his eggs every time she so much as twitched. Enko tried to tell herself she didn't enjoy spooking him. Nope. Not a bit. This is Enko. Irika introduced her with a grimace as they sat on the floor some time later. She's going to be looking after you from now on. I don't need looking after. The blonde protested. I've done just fine by myself. Enko smirked. Now, is that any way to talk to your sensei, Squirt? Naruto jerked back as though he'd been scalded. You. Me. How do I know she's even a ninja? Oh. She's nuts. Naruto. Irika admonished. Okay, maybe she was enjoying this a little. I could show you my partner, but that'd be telling. Enko teased, rolling up her sleeve, watching the boy's eyes flick to her arm. If you really want. In the end, she didn't get the chance. Irika stiffened suddenly, his gaze shooting past Naruto to the crude nest the boy had constructed. Naruto, he began slowly, turn around. What? The lad froze, rapt with anticipation. Naruto did just that, and his brow shot straight to his hairline. because his eggs were actually hatching. In a bolt of orange, he was there. Tiny, hairline fractures etched themselves into the surface of each, steadily becoming cracks as he looked on, coming as close as he dared. Oh my god, oh hi me god. As he looked on, the orange egg began to shake, then thrash violently, the being within fighting to escape, uttering soft growls as it did so. Whereas the second, the dark egg, remained almost still by comparison. Only the occasional movement betrayed otherwise. When it did hatch, however, it did so all at once and with great vigor, bits of broken eggshells shooting out like falling comets to smack him in the face. Naruto barely felt them, because the other egg chose that moment to split open, a tiny head poking out with a sudden burst of light and energy. Iruka started violently. So too did Enko. A pair of bright blue eyes stared up at Naruto, mirrored by another, smaller pair. That was where the similarities ended. The creature that had hatched from the orange egg was emphatically a lizard, bright orange and barely meeting his knee. Naruto distantly recognized it, but his brain simply refused to work for some strange reason. He found he could only stare at the determined little guy, quietly marveling at its flame-tipped tail as it swayed from side to side. Distantly, he was aware of Enko's whistle. Well, damn. Would you look at that? Aren't you lucky? All Naruto managed was a numb nod. The lizard agreed, apparently. Charmander! She exclaimed happily, gazing up at him with an adoring grin, pleased that the strange woman respected her awesomeness. As well she should. Oh wow. Daring to creep closer, Naruto patted the small lizarded head with a hand. So you're Charmander, huh? Char. The lizard tilted her head, as if to say obviously. Naruto's jaw dropped, then threatened to fall off altogether when something dark and furry brushed up against his right leg, clamoring for his attention. Without thinking, he knelt down to greet his second partner, until he was eye level with the newcomer. He looked like, well, a fox, for lack of a better word. And a fierce one at that. Dark as night with red ears, the Pokémon was somehow even shorter than Charmander, but certainly didn't lack for spirit. He was currently doing his utmost to look tough, despite having only just hatched, and his short stature. Said facade all but folded when Naruto scratched him behind the ears, eliciting a pleased purr from the tricky little fox as its eyes slid shut. Zorer. Iruka dared a glance at Enko, realizing the implications of that particular Pokémon. A Charmander was all well and good, but a Zorua. Oblivious to it all, Naruto continued to scratch the fox behind the ears. You like that, huh, little guy? Zorua! The dark fox kit chirped in contentment. Char! Its compatriot squawked in agreement. Charmander! Naruto blinked, then frowned at the shared gleam in their eye. Now wait just a second. That was all he managed before the little critters decided to tackle him, taking out his knees. Then came the licking. So much licking. Gah! It tickles. Fledglings are fierce. Dear Diary. Well, I'm in shock. I've got a sneaky little fox and an orange, fire-breathing lizard as my partners. Did I mention orange? Good. I'm saying again. Charmander's a clever girl, too. She definitely understands me when I'm talking to her, and she's damn quick to respond. Heck, she already knows one of her most powerful moves, right out of the egg. Now that's something. Eh? What? How do I know she's a girl? Simple. Iruka told me. Of course, Enko said the same thing, but I don't trust her as far as I can throw her. Sensei or not, hell, guardian or not, I'm still convinced the woman is crazy. Wanna know what she did as soon as she realized I scratched my cheek? She licked the blood right off my face, for crying out loud. And I have to live with her? Me. On one hand, I'm glad to get out of this nasty sty of an apartment, but why do I have to move in with Princess Stabity? Wait. I'm forgetting all about Zoro. He's even trickier than Charmander. Hungry, too. Think he likes the nickname, though. He likes taking my stuff, that's for sure. I can't tell if it's just a game to him, or if he's honestly trying to train. Iruka demanded we get them their checkup. Of course, hate hospitals, but everything turned out alright. They're healthy as can be. Good thing, too, because I never want to go back to that hospital unless I absolutely have to. Needles are friggin' scary. But at least. Give that back. Zoro leaped away and out of Naruto's lap before the blonde could nab him, clutching its hard-won prize in his mouth. Namely, his journal, with its now unfinished entry hanging between the little kit's jaws. For a fleeting instant the red and black fox stood perched on the sofa, its tail wagging rapidly, body crouched and ready to spring. Then with a mischievous gleam in its blue eyes the little dark type bounded away, shooting across the hall with a startling burst of speed, agility, that had the Pokemon prankster streaking away in a red/black blur faster than even Naruto could follow. "Sorarura!" It cackled happily. "Oi, you little thief!" the boy cried, giving chase. Charmander watched the exchange with a muted shrug, as if to say, oh, well. There simply wasn't any challenge in chasing the kitsune, not when its speed so outclassed her own. Greater fights awaited without trying to clash with her wicked ally. Besides, she already knew the outcome of this one in any case. The result would likely be much the same as it always was, as it had been since they'd left behind the stinking hole of Naruto's apartment and been shunted into Anko's. That had been several days ago. She couldn't say she was displeased with the change of scenery either. Anko's dwelling bordered somewhere between an apartment and a small house, sporting a sparsely furnished kitchen and multiple rooms as well as an outdoor yard complete with training posts. Said posts now bore numerous claw marks courtesy of the flame Pokemon. With newfound room to stretch metaphorically, of course, her legs, Charmander was quite pleased. She could train with Naruto to her heart's content, watch intently as he the purplet drilled him into the floor with each successive spar. But so too did he grew stronger with every encounter. It was something the lizard Pokemon took a fierce pride in. If she was going to be strong, it only stood to reason that her partners should be just as strong as her, if not more so. She, however, had long since learned that the mistress of torture didn't appreciate such a ruckus in the early mornings. Nor was she particularly receptive to anything resembling the mad cackling that now raced through the long halls as Boy gave chase to Fox. The end result was something of a circuitous route, as Naruto chased his fleet-footed partner around the kitchen island in a vicious loop that seemed to go on without end. Charmander shook her head at the sight. One heart-stopping encounter with Anko's partner had been more than enough to curb her temper in that regard for good. Sora, on the other hand, never seemed to learn his lesson no matter how many times it was forced upon him. Especially when one considered today's importance, today, when they would add 2 more their pack. "Shut up!" An annoyed shout was all it took to seal Zora's fate, ending its game in an instant. A dark purple coil slammed into the kit's path, followed by a bemused hiss. The small fox skidded to a halt, whimpering. Then it looked up. Up some more. And up. Up. "See, Zora?" A towering shadow fell over the shivering dark type, angry and hissing. "Arbok!" The massive snake-like Pokemon seemed to fill the entire corridor all at once, simultaneously furious and very, very grumpy. It, too, did not much enjoy being woken from its early morning slumber. Zora froze beneath the weight of the serpent's glare. It leaned forwards then, and despite its distinct lack of anything resembling lips, the cobra somehow managed to grin, flashing its many pointed teeth in a menacing smile. Zora squawked and made its retreat a heartbeat too late. The snake was already in motion. Its large, serpentine coils wrapped around the tiny kit's body in a blinding flurry. Not enough to hurt the poor thing, of course, but just enough to hold him firmly in place as well as remind the tricky fox Pokemon who ruled the roost in this house. Impossibly, its master looked even more menacing despite her relative state of undress. It was also enough to scar Naruto for life. Arg! Even from her perch on the table, Charmander could hear the blonde's startled squawk. "What the hell, Anko?" "Oh, please. You've seen worse. Don't remind me." Clad in little more than her undergarments, his sensei all but stormed out into the hall, reached down into Arbok's coils, and plucked the sheepish kit from her Pokemon's grasp. Angry hazel eyes dropped to the terrified Zora, noticing the battered, tattered book in its mouth. Deft fingers snapped down, locking around the matted missive, clenching only slightly when the poor fox tried to resist. Even from here she could feel the waves of killing intent radiating from the purple-haired Jounin. "Fork it over the journal, runt," the poison wielder snarled. Zora complied hastily, dropping its prize. "Good. Now get. I need to get ready." Zora didn't need to be told twice, he got. Naruto did as well. Idly, Charmander couldn't help but wonder if the cycle would repeat itself tomorrow, too. Several hours and a fair bit of thrashing later, Naruto found himself all but dragged back into class. Not willingly, mind you. "I don't get it," he complained. "Why are we here? I already passed the test, right?" Anko's only response was a saucy wink. You'll see. But I don't see, the boy protested, growing more and more baffled. You're going to be my sensei, right? He made a face at the mere mention of it, lips screwing up as though he'd just bitten into a particularly bitter lemon. So why do I have to come back here? Well, you have to meet your teammates, don't you? The Jonin replied with more patience than he gave her credit for. Don't you want to meet them before I end up dragging them through the mud? Yeah, I guess, but... Good boy. See ya laters. Without another word, she vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving him to fend for himself. Naruto twitched slightly. Charmander yelped at the skill, eyes gleaming. Mander? No, the blonde sighed, glancing down at his ever-eager ally. You can't learn how to do that. Hell, even I don't know it. Her small shoulders drooped. Char. Hey, don't be like that. Rua? You and me both, buddy. Naruto muttered at the little fox's inquiry, idly reaching up past his headband to muss his partner's fur. As was its lot, Zoro had claimed a perch on his head, oddly reminiscent of something Akamaru did with Kiba, its tiny paws gripping into his hair with surprising strength. Utterly unrepentant despite having been caught in the act of its mischief, his prankster partner of a Pokemon had taken to leering at anyone and anything who so much as glanced at them askance, almost as if it were just daring them to protest its presence. When one paused to consider just how many started at the sight of the unique dark fox, there were quite a few indeed. Charmander simply refused to be carried, the proud Pokemon opting to walk instead. He could respect that much. Oddly enough, when he found himself all but shoved into the lecture room, it was nearly completely empty. Most of the graduating class was nowhere to be seen. There were a few faces he recognized, however. Aha! Naruto recognized Ino dead away, if only because his fellow blonde bolted upright and started shouting the moment she so much as laid eyes on his shadow. Judging by the way she all but flailed her fists about herself, he was guessing she was none too pleased with him or the strange situation they were in. Ah well, at least she didn't hit him. Anything was preferable to that, if not by much. Bracing himself for the inevitable rant, he placed both hands in his pockets, sighing as she all but stormed up to him. What took you so long, Naruto? She cried. We had to wait for you. I could ask you the same thing. Charmander echoed, defending her partner. Ino nearly did a spit take. Eh? The pale blonde's attention swiftly snapped southwards to the orange lizard at the blonde's side, her anger momentarily misplaced, forgotten in the wake of this revelation. Blue eyes narrowed, quietly observing the stoic little lizard at the blonde's side. The determined Pokemon met her glare for glare, refusing to back down under the weight of the Yamanaka's incredulous stare. Despite Naruto's initial dismay, Ino actually tried to pet her. To his double dismay, Charmander actually let her. She even hummed like a contented kitten, despite the dearth of any need to do so. Is that your Pokemon? She asked. She's cute. Charmander bristled slightly at such slander. Cute? She was not cute. She was fierce. One of them. Naruto pointed to the top of his head for emphasis. Then there's this little guy. Say hi, Zoro. Zoro cried his name from its perch atop the blonde's spiky mane, merrily waving a tiny paw. Zor. Then, incorrigible prankster that it was, the dark type leaned forward and utilized one of its favorite moves. Lick. The result was nothing short of spectacular. Yeek! Ino squeaked and all but bolted backwards as the small kit licked her nose, her face a bright shade of scarlet. Naruto! She sputtered, raising a trembling finger. What the hell? Her blush could have put a certain Hyuga to shame, and it certainly did in an odd, albeit unexpected, sort of way. Perhaps, had it realized just how much such a simple act would change things, it would have stayed put. Still, Zoro didn't much care in any case. The human's reaction had been far too priceless to forego such mischief. Gah, sorry! Naruto cried, trying and failing to shoot the snickering kid a glare. He's really friendly, I guess? For a long moment, the Jinchuriki honestly thought Ino was going to wallop him into next week. Her expression certainly promised pain of some sort, righteous female wrath boiling over. Then, to his surprise and relief, she averted her gaze. Fine. She relented. But, if he does it again? He won't. Still, they're pretty cool, right? Oddly enough, Ino actually flushed anew. So what if you have two, huh? She huffed, puffing out her chest and struggling to forget that incident. Look at what I got. Naruto's gaze snapped down. Avoid looking at the chest. Avoid the chest. Avoid Thechastadokosman, to the tiny green creature nestled in her arms. Bright, golden eyes peered back at him inquisitively, and for a moment he found himself flummoxed. It looked, well, like a gecko, really. All dark green and bearing a deep red crest on its belly, it was small to the point of being outright petite, more so than Zora even. Finding fault with his gaze, the puny Pokemon scrambled out of its owner's arms and landed nimbly on its tail at their feet. Trico. The grass type preened proudly, chewing on the small fig in its mouth. Oh, cool. He grinned, easily impressed. Does it know any moves besides pound yet? Ino colored deeply at that. Bullet seed. That's it. Well, what do yours know? Well, a bunch. Naruto chirped happily, entirely missing the spark of anger in those pale blue eyes. I mean, we've trained like crazy. Let's see-o. Zora's are lick, bite, feint attack, agility, and well, we don't know the rest of them. Charmander, she can use Scratch Ember, Metal Claw, and Flamethrower, I think. Ino swallowed thickly, suddenly horribly nervous. Why, you think? How on earth was it growing so quickly? They hadn't even had their Pokemon for that long. Charmander grinned deviously at Trico. Char. Ko! The little grass type protested at the insult. Mander. A blast of flame sent the little gecko scurrying back to the arms of its mistress. Hey! Sorry, the blonde replied hastily, scooping up the indignant lizard before it could loose another fiery breath. She's really feisty. That started something of a small stampede, as each of the remaining genin each desired to see Naruto's partners for themselves. Then their own partners in turn were quite curious about their Pokemon, in addition to all the new sights, smells, and sounds assaulting their senses. In short order, chaos ensued. Nearly everyone was suddenly out to prove just how incredible their new partners were, albeit some were more subtle than others. Naruto, more than happy to be acknowledged, received so much attention in the first place, welcomed it with open arms. It certainly helped. Hey, Naruto! Chuji! The Akimichi was the first to approach, followed by a snuffling little blue creature that only narrowly beat out Ino's Trico in terms of height. Suddenly very interested, Zora clambered off Naruto's head and hopped to the floor to greet this curious newcomer. Giving the strange Pokemon a cursory sniff, the dark fox tilted its head, blinking. Zor? Fanpi. The little blue elephant raised her trunk in greeting, one mirrored by the kit's toothy grin. Just like that, they were off in a flash, chasing one another about the room like good friends. Naruto felt the beginning of a smile pull at his lips as he observed. He'd never had much opportunity to play with others his age when in his younger days. Most parents simply kept their children away from him. He still didn't understand why to this day. It warmed him more than words to see that his partner at least wouldn't be denied a high-spirited game of tag. Spirited, isn't she? Chuji managed a nervous laugh. Yeah, I guess she is. She's really a bundle of energy. Troublesome. Naruto blinked, noticing a certain lazy genius reclining beside him. Damn. What happened to you? You don't look so good. Shikamaru looked positively ill, as if he hadn't gotten enough sleep as of late. My egg happened. The shadow wielder grumbled. It didn't take long to realize what he meant. His Pokemon was all but sprawled across his back. For that matter, it was also the most recognizable to Naruto. He vividly remembered its humanoid shape and yellow-brown colors. He also remembered it slept almost all time. Much like its partner. If he remembered correctly, and yes indeed, Anko's grueling lessons had surely stuck with him, this was a psychic type and an infamous teleporter at that. No wonder the poor Nara hadn't gotten any sleep. He probably spent the last week chasing his new partner halfway across Konoha. As if to echo that thought, the sleepy Pokemon yawned. Abra. Charmander sighed a half-hearted greeting of her own, expelling a thin tongue of flame and frustrations. She had no interest in chasing someone who could quite literally disappear and reappear on the other side of the village. She might be battle-hungry, but she certainly wasn't about to go on a harebrained flight with nothing to show for it. Too much work for precious little experience. Brah. The lazy Pokemon answered in agreement. Naruto bit his tongue. That was possibly the perfect Pokemon for the lazy Nara. Something tugged on the leg of his jumpsuit, demanding his attention. Naruto complied, glancing south, and found himself look at a tiny, scaly little creature, even more baffling than the last. A bipedal, grayish-green Pokemon with short limbs and pale, straight tusks protruding from the sides of its mouth. The back of its head was dark grayish-green with a tall, slightly curved horn. Large, dark grayish-green ovals with its red eyes peered up at him, its rounded snout snorting in anticipation. A forest green collar marking encircled its neck, making it look as though the tiny creature was somehow on a leash. All in all, it was a cute little fellow, he dare say harmless. But who knew when it came to Pokemon? Some would say Zoro was harmless, but he was one hell of a prankster after all. Hello? He blinked briefly, baffled. Aksu, it replied cheerily. Will you stop running off? A rough voice demanded. Geez, I take my eyes off you for 1 second. Naruto! Don't let him get away! Glancing up, the QB container nearly found himself face to face with Aksu's partner. To his surprise, he found he actually recognized him. Kiba sniffed. I guess he's yours? Yeah, the Inuzuka drawled cheerily, he's always trying to pick fights. Samima says he's a dragon type. Isn't that neat? A wry grin tugged at his marked face. Dragons are strong against fire, right? Betcha Aksu could beat your Charmander no problem. Charmander grinned at the implied challenge. It was pure teeth. At last, someone worthy of her time. Despite its innate resistance to the flames, the little dragon cringed away from the heat of her tail. Naruto laughed. A battle sounded perfect. Unlike his one-sided beatdowns against Enko, here he actually had a chance. Let's go, then. I cannot allow that. A stern voice interjected before they could begin. Why, you ask? Because it is forbidden. Ah, Shino! Kiba cried, rounding on the Aburame. Don't be such a buzzkill. I can kick his ass any day. Naruto bristled, mildly insulted. In your dreams, dog boy. As I said, it is forbidden. An angry, shrilling note followed his words. Screech. Both boys blanched. You're right. The source of the agonizing note, his Pokemon, had claimed a roost atop his shoulder, and was something of a very large bug. Naruto wasn't terribly surprised, considering. He was surprised, however, by the sheer amount of animosity the reddish-purple creature was currently directing at him and Charmander. Its yellow eyes threatened to bore holes in him, and its teeth threatened to do much more than that if he came any closer. Now Naruto wasn't entirely sure what he might have done to offend the Bi-Pokemon, but clearly he must have done something to upset it, because it wouldn't stop giving him a scary face. Does he have a problem with me? Apologies. Shino mumbled. Bug types fear fire. Hey, it's not like I was planning to burn him, you know. Shino might have blinked, but Naruto wasn't entirely sure. Venipede. Oh, so that's his name. Indeed. Their conversation, if one could call it that, was all going relatively well, until Sakura approached Naruto. Then all hell broke loose. Zoro skidded to a halt, suddenly distracted from its game Phanpy, its hackles rising angrily. In a bolt of speed, the little kit was at his side and past him, placing itself firmly between him and Sakura. Charmander took it a step further. She actually hissed. Faster than Naruto could blink, the little orange lizard spun and bared its fangs at the startled Kunoichi, snarling fearsomely. Growl. Charmander! It cried, tail flame flaring. Char, char, char. What the heck? Sakura clutched her own partner tightly, repressing a shiver of fear. Her Pokemon did the same. For a fleeting moment she actually thought the flame Pokemon was going to roast them on the spot. Naruto seemed half inclined to let it. He certainly didn't do anything to make the little lizard cease its angry rant. Her arms tightened across her chest, reflexively seeking to defend her center of gravity. It was only when her partner let out a tiny cry of pain that she remembered the small being in her arms. Buniri! Oh, sorry! Then she remembered the angry Pokemon glowering up at her. What's wrong with it? Her. Naruto clarified coldly. She is not in it. And I guess Char just doesn't like you, Pinky. Pinky? Sakura sputtered. Now it was Ino's turn to howl with laughter. Charmander wasn't laughing, though. Not one bit. Mander. If looks could kill, Pinky would have been a smoldering pile of smoldering ash. This girl was not part of the pack, nor would she ever be pack. This girl was the polar opposite. She was an enemy. Pain, loneliness, sadness, and sorrow, all these things and more. This one had hurt the alpha, and that could not be tolerated. She'd felt these feelings as an egg time and time again, dark thoughts like poison in the back of her mind. Now that she finally had a face to pair them with, she was determined to keep the harm seeker away from him at all costs. Her small claws flexed at the thought. If she ever dared raise a hand against her partner again, she would burn her. Admittedly, Naruto wasn't very impressed either. Now that he no longer looked at the Haruno through rose-tinted glasses, he found her rather annoying, truth be told. Her partner slightly less so, if only because it was so damnably adorable. A rabbit. Brown and tan and as harmless as well a bunny. What the hell could a rabbit do in a fight? Didn't matter, he supposed? So long as the powers that be didn't place her on a team with him, he'd never have to care. Arceus, damn it, he didn't want to. Something in him had hardened since the night they'd received their headbands, and he wasn't sure if he'd ever be the same again. Now that he knew what it was like to receive genuine affection both from his partners and people like Enko, he realized how incredibly blind he'd been. And then Naruto saw Sasuke. More aptly, his partner. Cold anger vanished. Wow. What? To his credit, Naruto tried not to laugh at the last Uchiha. He really did. It would be rude of him, and more than a touch disrespectful to mock someone's Pokemon. He pursed his lips, and even went so far as to bite his tongue, but still the snicker escaped him. Enko-sensei had told him time and time again that no one would ever take him seriously if he started laughing like a madman out of nowhere. They'd just think he was crazy, and while she insisted that crazy was often a good thing, there were limits. By the time he realized it, he was all of 3 seconds from losing control of his gut. He just couldn't help himself. Pfft. Thus the floodgates opened and there was no more holding back the waters. With a sharp bark of laughter, Naruto tumbled to the floor, clutching his ribs and whooping like a mad haunter. He just couldn't help himself. Tears of mirth streamed down his face as he rolled about the floor like a mad tumbleweed. A cat! He had a cat! And then the Uchiha's partner growled at him and sent him into renewed paroxysms of delight. Shoulders shaking, he redoubled his laughter, much to the blue-black creature's dismay. Shinx! Bahahaha! Why are you laughing, Dobe? I'm sorry! I can't help it! Oh ho ho, this is priceless! Ahaha! Ow! Oh God! My ribs! Eventually, however, his laughter ceased, and he found himself face to face with a rather perturbed prodigy of an Uchiha and an equally annoyed Electric Nico. Which would have been just a mite bit worrying if he hadn't received a crash course in all things taijutsu from a certain snake mistress. He was far from being a master like someone of Rock Lee or Arceus forbid, Might Guy's caliber, but even so he was fairly certain he could, at least hold his own against someone of Sasuke's level. And with 2 partners ready to back him up, no less. Not to mention the ace up his sleeve. To his surprise, Ino of all people swooped in and broke things up before either could utter so much as a single word. Boys, she called, if you're going to keep glaring at each other you might as well just kiss and get it over with. Sasuke grimaced. Naruto gagged. Each paled. Nevertheless, the tension evaporated, and since either genin wanted to so much as look at the other after that, their little argument fizzled out before it could truly begin. Which was a pity, all things considered. Naruto honestly regretted laughing like an idiot back there, but he was certain he wouldn't regret going toe-to-toe with the broody boy. Part of him longed to showcase his newly acquired skills, including the handful of jutsu he had managed to wheedle from Enko when she wasn't looking. But the small, increasingly logical half instilled into him by his new mentor urged patience and discretion. Would it not be that much sweeter to surprise the last Uchiha when he least expected it? Revenge was a dish best served cold, after all. You're welcome, Ino muttered as they crossed paths on their way back to the desks. Naruto blinked. Why did you? We're even now, she sang, sashaying back to her seat. Thanks for making me laugh earlier. Pinky. Ha! Oh, I'm going to be getting giggles out of that one all week. Her fellow blonde could only frown as he took his own place at his desk and awaited. Anything, really? Nothing came. Seconds turned to minutes and morphed into hours, and then hours began to feel like days. One by one the others and their Pokemon began to slouch, waiting for their sensei to arrive. Naruto tried everything. Meandering about proved fruitless, as they weren't allowed to leave the room with anything less than a jounin escort, and while he could just as easily have used Henge to disguise himself as one and fly the coop, he wasn't willing to risk Anko's wrath over something so juvenile. That woman had put the fear of God into him, and something else besides. Nope. Not worth it. In the end, he simply elected to catch up on his sleep while he waited, a sentiment Zoro and Charmander readily echoed. If not for an elbow prodding him, he might have slept far longer. Psst. Naruto. Ino's voice intruded on his pleasant, rameny dreams. Wake up. Huh? What? Bleary eyes fluttered open. You're still here? What do you mean? Hinata and I have been sitting here for hours, now. Naruto blinked rapidly. Huh? With that, the dense blonde finally became aware of the other genin in the room with them, though he would have been hard-pressed to find her in the first place, given that she'd all but tucked herself into the furthest of corners from the door. Curious, he made a beeline for her. The heiress feebly raised a hand at his approach, her pale face darkening slightly. Perhaps had he known the sheer amount of effort it took for the poor girl to meet his gaze, he might not have gotten so close. As it was, he blindly forged ahead, heedless of the consequences. Hello, Naruto-kun. Yo. Hi. Naruto's jaw clicked shut on his greeting, eyes bulging. Where did? Over here. The baffled blonde's gaze snapped to the small, green and white, almost humanoid creature in her arms. It looked almost like a small child, really. Curious red orbs stared back at him, shaded by a messy mop jade hair. A tiny white hand rose, waving happily, the other quietly caressing its horns. As he looked on, she cried her name, and gave another jaunty wave. Charmander tilted her head, regarding the little psychic type with mild curiosity. Naruto's reaction was slightly more audible. Oh, cool. Was that your Pokemon talking to me? At the latter's nod, his grin grew. That's awesome. Wish mine could do that. Ralts. Her partner chirped. Atop the blonde's head, Zoro's ear twitched. The tiny Pokemon perked up, an impish grin lighting its sleepy face. Zor? Ral. The psychic chirped, as if to say go for it. Naruto realized too late what his prankster Pokemon partner was planning. By the time he thought to reach up, Zoro had already scampered off his head and landed atop Hinata's. The heiress barely had time to stiffen before the tiny kit, light as a feather, leaped down and claimed himself a proud little place in her lap. And the little bugger grinned. The blonde froze, suddenly very leery of scooping the fox up at all lest he get walloped for touching someplace he shouldn't. Hinata would never hit him, of course, but he had no way of knowing that, only that the wrath of any female was something to be feared. So when Hinata actually started petting Zoro, he had no idea what to do. Do you like that? She asked tentatively. Zoro purred. Zor. Before anyone could stop him, the kid placed two paws on the Hyuga's chest and leaned up. Just as he had with Ino, he got her right between the eyes. Lick. Steam. Hinata squeaked. Pure steam burst from her ears. Gah! Naruto squawked, snatching the fox back. I'm so sorry. I don't know why he keeps doing that. I mean, he's only done it to Ino and all. Something clicked in his head. And it wasn't that. Naruto froze. Wait. If you, me, and Ino are the only ones left here, then that means. As luck would have it, Anko chose that moment to make her entrance. For the life of him, Naruto didn't know where she'd gotten how she'd managed to line up her shot so she collided directly with the window and avoided cutting herself to ribbons on the reinforced glass. Nor did he wholly understand where she'd found that many smoke bombs or even the bloody banner, for crying out loud, but he silently resolved to add that trick to his repertoire of tricks. It really was a rather impressive entrance when you thought about, loud, flashy, and poised to grab the attention of everyone in the room. Pretty badass, now that he thought about it. What came next utterly ruined the moment. Ino Yamanka and Hinata Hyuga. The ponytailed Violet declared curtly, thrusting a finger forward. Come with me if you want to live. The silence was appalling, more so for Naruto than anyone else. He quietly facebombed. Anko loved drama. What? Just ignore her, he managed. She gets like this, sometimes watch out for the body flicker. It's a trip. Wait, what do you mean body flick ACK? In short order, the Jounin grabbed the three flabbergasted genin and their startled Pokemon, in a crushing hug. They vanished in a swirl of leaves not a moment later. When the world finally reoriented itself, and up was up and down was down once again, they found they were no longer in class. Or in a room at all, for that matter. Instead, the unlikely trio found themselves standing in a large field one Naruto distantly recognized, if only for the charred craters. He knew this training ground. It was where Anko had showcased a handful of her more explosive jutsu and deadliest summons. Jutsu he'd never mastered. Jutsu he was likely about to be on the receiving end of, and her. Oh, this was going to suck. Alright, brats, here's your first mission as part of Team Mitarashi. Anko barked, spreading her arms wide. I want you to hit me with every damn thing you've got. See this headband? She jerked a defiant thumb to her forehead, grinning like a madwoman. You have to knock it off my head in the next 3 hours? Yeah, 3 hours sounds damn good. But here's the catch, you have to do it a certain way. And I ain't telling you how. Pass this test and I'll teach you each one jutsu of your choosing. Fail and, her grin grew imperceptibly, well trust me when I say you don't want to fail. What happens if we do? Hinata squeaked. I tie you to a post and do things to you. Trust me, you're better off not knowing. Oh. She added as an afterthought, and then I get to kick your smug little asses back to the academy. That was all it took to get Naruto and Hinata motivated. Ino not so much. The Yamanaka frowned, petulantly, crossing both arms before her chest. And if we don't want to, sensei? Why was she stuck with these two anyway? She'd wanted to be on Sasuke-kun's team. Instead, forehead got her way and she found herself stuck with this. It wasn't fair. Now, she held no anger for Naruto or Hinata, mind you. In fact, she didn't much mind having the blonde and the stuttering Hyuga. She wouldn't have minded having either of them as part of her trio. That wasn't the problem. You see, she did care about her romantic rival trumping her. That, and being partnered with a crazy woman. Trico echoed its partner's visible displeasure as well, raising a tiny green fist to echo its ally's displeasure. Trico! The little green lizard cried. Tree! Anko's grin could have put the devil himself to shame. Funny thing there. I was hoping you'd say that. It's no fun if you don't struggle. Wait, what? With a snap of her fingers, a flash of dark purple burst from her exposed arm and resolved itself into existence beside the jounin, swiftly taking on the hulking form of a massive, towering serpent. It reared back, tongue tasting the air, its hooded head craning this way and that as it took in the newcomers. A Brock hissed softly, trying to decide if they were part of the nest or just prey. The dangle-loving ninja snapped her fingers again, and that was the end of that. Arbok. Prey. Prey it was. Hissing sibilant, the snake Pokemon rose up on its tail, glowering down at the mouthy blonde. Ino's already pale face lost all semblance of color as those dark, angry eyes met hers in an intimidating stare that all but left the blonde and her fledgling Pokemon paralyzed on the spot, glare, with a blinding intensity that seemed to set its eerie crest alight. Then, its target immobilized, the cobra uttered a heart-stopping roar. Arbok. The Yamanaka squawked, tumbling to the floor. All right. I give. Naruto sighed. Wow. Even I'm not that dense. Zip it, bub. This is Arbok. Anko introduced her partner with a flourish, grinning as he patted the massive coils with her offhand. She's going to be taking care of you for next 3 hours. Say hi, Arbok. To him, not sure I like the sound of that, sensei. Hinata's Ralts chirped in agreement of her own. Too bad. Aeon start. Sadly, the brief moment of hesitation cost the 3 genin the element of surprise. Not that they would have been able to move anyway, what with a 7-foot cobra staring them down and hissing at the top of its lungs. Even the Pokemon froze, momentarily frightened out of their wits at the sheer aura of menace exuded by the towering serpent. Ability, Intimidate. Until Charmander stiffened and loosed a blast of flame. Startled by the sudden flare, Arbok flinched, averting its gaze. Scatter! Naruto yelped, clambering upright. To the trees! Careful! Anko called as they fled into the woods. Arbok isn't very nice when she's hunting. Watch out for poison. You're crazy! Naruto squawked. You know you love me, brat. Needless to say, the next 3 hours were pure hell. Capture the headband. Beneath the sea, something stirred. Slowly at first, then with ever-increasing fervor, the Pokemon began to wake, shaking sensation back into its numb body. No easy task that. Bound within layers of root and earth, held captive by the waters of its own grief and guilt, it shook off the sediment and ponderously rose from its long slumber upon the ocean floor. Time meant little to it, but it found its pulse quickening regardless, something akin to eagerness overtaking it as it shook off the last vestiges of its long sleep. Its tail cracked outward, shattering a nearby reef, and the creatures within, small and large alike, startled at the Pokemon's sudden awakening, darting away into the murk to escape what they presumed to be wrath. The Pokemon didn't care. Its priorities were held firmly elsewhere, and hunger was not yet numbered among them. There would be time for food later, it reasoned as its mind stretched out, seeking that which had woken it from its slumber, both dismayed and heartened to sense another? Something new. Something different. Something familiar. Something it had not known in many years during its time within these murky depths. Craning its neck, the aquatic Pokemon uttered turned its gaze toward the light of the surface, considering. A mind sharper than the slyest shinobi possessed by a creature of unimaginable wrath and power turned inward now, contemplating. Instinct compelled it to investigate, to leave its watery den and seek out that which roused it, but that instinct found itself tempered by caution. This presence reminded it of its last partner, the red one with a temper of flame. It remembered the red one well, the pact they'd formed, the bond shared. Then the masked one had come and there had been only darkness. But now at last there was light, a presence keenly familiar, one it longed to meet yet. No, it would watch and it would wait, knowing he would come. The bloodline lived on. Meanwhile, in the training grounds of Konoha. Well, damn. They actually managed to hide themselves pretty well. Anko decided she would have to give the brats some credit. They definitely knew when to run. Pretty damn fast, at that. Not only had Naruto and his newfound teammates all but flung themselves into the trees before Arbok could even think to pounce, but they'd done so as a ninja should. There was no screaming, no mad dash of tangled arms and limbs, but a controlled retreat. From the moment the first smoke bomb went off in her face, they hurtled themselves away to the trees, as she looked on complacently. Even so, it wasn't bad. Arbok was known for playing with her prey, so it made a twisted sort of sense that they'd be able to escape the initial volley. The second, however. Arbok. A rasping hiss rose from her partner in what could only loosely be described as laughter, interrupted her musings. Nah, not Hyper Beam. Anko disagreed after a moment's thought. We're not trying to kill the little buggers, just put them through their paces. Let's try something else. Any ideas? Arbok's tail lashed the ground 4 times in swift, rapid succession. Sludge bomb? Hell yeah. Just hold off on too much poison. If a serpent could smile, Arbok did just that. Arching her long body, the massive cobra pushed itself upright on its thick coils, angling its head toward the trees. Its fang maw parted, strands of viscous venom dripping. With an awful retching sound, it prepared to expel its signature move. Then it spat. And the sludge rained down. A series of startled squawks told her all she needed to know. And there we go! Anko crowed, pumping her fist. Bullseye! Arbok stuttered a hiss. No, let's give them a few minutes to get their act together. Then you can play with them. Well, Anko relented with a shrug. She supposed so long as they learned to work together by the time limit, it really didn't matter how traumatized they were. On some level, they needed to learn that this wasn't a game. There would always be someone stronger than them and their partners. Typing was important, of course, but it could be overcome. This exercise served as both a painful reminder and an induction to the shinobi world. It remained to be seen if they'd learn this lesson on this own, or if she would have to beat it into their bones. Brawn wasn't everything. A ninja had to use their intuition. One way or another, those little shits were going to learn. Meanwhile, someone certainly learned something. Naruto! Get it off, get it off, get it off. Ino wailed as she struggled to claw the cloying purple sludge off herself. To no avail, for it seemed to have gotten everywhere. Where had this stuff even come from? It had just fallen out of the heavens and fell right on her head. And right in the middle of the test. What kind of crap luck was this? This was the absolute last thing she needed, but somehow all thought abandoned her, and she started shrieking. Unfortunately, her frantic efforts only served to worsen her plight, stretching the noxious material further against her pale locks. Fear took hold and sense abandoned her, leaving the poor girl gibbering like a madwoman. Come on, just get it off, she whined tearfully. I swear, I'm going to be sick. Hold still then, will ya? Naruto sighed in reply. I've almost got it. Just hurry. Which led to this awkward, unspeakable predicament of having to stand still as a boy she barely knew carefully pried the thick globs of poison from her personage. Tiny, focused bursts of fire from Charmander served to harden the sludge, which allowed Naruto and Zoro to tear it away from her hair and face as she tried and failed not to squirm. Of course, her incessant wriggling wasn't help matters. Still, she noticed he seemed to try and take great pangs not to let his hands linger, almost flinching whenever she looked directly at him. A product of their childhood, perhaps? She'd be having words with Sakura about that. Damn, Ino, the whiskered blonde's foul mouth piped up, distracting her. You alright? I didn't know you were afraid of poison. The blonde physically fought down a shudder at the mention of that hated word. I can't help it, okay? You would be too, if your dad had a mook. Well, I never really knew my old man or my mother, so. Oh crap. That was insensitive of me, wasn't it? Naruto narrowly repressed another sigh. Just a little bit, yeah? Ino swore softly. Well, shit. An awkward silence persisted after that, broken only by the intermittent bursts of hardened sludge hitting the ground and Trico's angry muttering. Ino spared her partner a relieved glance, chuffed to find that the tiny gecko had managed to clean the worst of the poison courtesy of some damp leaves. Trico. It groused angrily. Tree. Oh, right. He doesn't like poison either, does he? Naruto remarked. Will you stop saying that word? What poison? Naruto. The whiskered youth caught Charmander and Zoro giving him a blank look. What? Huh. Funny. He didn't recall teaching them facepalm. Still, it really was a bad day when he was being the responsible one out of their ragtag little group. But who would have thought someone like Ino would be deathly afraid of poison Pokemon? She had a grass type, for crying out loud. He would have found it funny if she weren't shaking so badly. She was genuinely scared out of her wits. But what did her father having a mook have to do with any of that? He'd have to ask her about that, sometime. Preferably when they weren't running for their lives and trying to outsmart their bats-hit crazy sensei. Speaking of which, where had Hinata gotten off to? He hadn't seen her since that first volley. Ino happened to notice something then. The poison doesn't bother you? Naruto blinked, having only just heard her. Not really, no. I've been training with Anko and Arbok for a while now. Guess you could say I built up an immunity to toxins. He glanced at his hand, idly massaging it to rub sensation back into his numb palm. I mean, it still stings a little, but beyond that. Alright, Ino frowned to herself, what the ever-loving hell has gotten into him? You're absolutely insane, you know that? She groused, coloring slightly as he held her hair back to dab a stray bit of sludge away from her cheek. I've been absolutely horrid to you ever since we were little. Why are you being so damn nice to me now that we're on an actual team? We've all got our own fears, the orange-clad ninja replied glibly, handing her back her braid, unflinching when she snatched it out of his hand and hastily rebound her hair back up. Me? Before Charmander and Zoro came along, I was afraid of being alone. In a way, I still have that fear. Anko once told I don't have the luxury of focusing on myself anymore. And the way I see it, she's right. I'm responsible for more than just myself now. He flicked a bemused glance at Charmander and Zoro, watching them fuss over an increasingly indignant Trico. Their life's theory in my hands, you know? I can't afford to be a screw-up anymore. And if that means I need to grow up, using my brain, and stop being so damn petty, well, I guess I'll have to. Ino blinked. Naruto, that was actually very mature of you. Then he had to open his mouth and ruin everything. Why, Ino? He retorted with an impish smile. Flattery? From you? Whatever would Sasuke-kun think? The Yamanka colored to the very roots of her hair. You better not tell anyone, Baka. Aeon, there's the tsundere. Naruto crowed, only relenting when he saw her face darken ominously. Alright. I won't tell anyone. I swear. Promise? Ino scowled. Hey, I never go back on my word, you know. Shake on it then. Ino challenged, thrusting her hand forward impudently. Right here, right now. You break your word? I break you. Never one to back down from a challenge, no matter how small, Naruto readily seized her palm in an iron vice. Good. She grinned, crushing his hand. I'd hate to have Trico perforate you with bullet seed. Pfft. Naruto growled, squeezing her fingers even tighter, flamethrower all the way. Is that a challenge? Her forehead jutted against his. Naruto retaliated in kind, refusing to relent. Then he smirked. Oh, Zora. The little kitsune perked up, Zor? Ino went positively pale. Don't you dare! Lick! Eek! A rustling in the trees had both blondes bristling, and sure enough, the thick foliage parted to reveal a rather battered-looking Hinata covered in leaves. Unfortunately, her intrusion came just as Zoro had delivered its most cherished move, and everything snowballed spectacularly from there. Ino realized just how badly they'd blundered a heartbeat later when the girl's face fell. The shy Hyuga was silent for a long moment. Then, eyes dull, she declared, I want to die. Where did that come from? Naruto wasn't having any of it. Oh, no, you don't. Come here. Why, hey. Forcefully grabbing the despondent Hyuga by the wrist, he dragged her back to the group and plopped her down beside Ino. Now listen up. Days spent with Anko had done wonders for his wits. He'd literally been forced to learn things he never would have given a second thought. Aspects like caution. With caution came cleverness. You picked up all manner of tricks when the living embodiment of torture took you under their wing and made your everyday a waking hell. A good-intentioned one perhaps, but a hell nonetheless. He'd learned a long time ago that charging in blindly just wasn't going to work against someone like her. If anything, she expected them to. Which meant she expected them to be sneaky. Which meant, I've got a good idea what this test is really about. Really, it's... So he told them his plan, long and at length. By the end, Ino and Hinata were exchanging a tense, baffled expression. You can't be serious. The Yamanka deadpanned. That'll never work. Oh, it'll work. It's so obvious she'll never expect it. Does Ralts-chan know confusion, by any chance? Ralts. The little Pokemon chirped happily. Naruto's smile was a pure ray of sunshine. She does? Then here's the plan. First, Hinata. The shy girl startled. Why yes, Naruto-kun? I need to borrow your jacket. Hinata blinked, slowly. And my jacket? With Anko. The initial ambush almost succeeded. Anko's first warning came in the slightest rustle of leaves to her right, Arbok tensing as she tasted the air. The sudden silence of the forest that followed proved a dead giveaway. Sighing, the snake summoner plucked a pair of kunai from her leg holster and brought them to bear, preparing herself for the assault that was surely approaching. Anyone else might have attributed that to the presence of an alpha predator like Arbok, but the Jonin knew better. Nearly 3 hours had passed. If those brats were going to try something, it had to be now or never. She didn't expect them to go down without some sort of fight, thus it was merely a matter of when and where. There! Zoro burst out of the brush with an explosive cry and latched itself onto the tip of Arbok's serpentine body, drawing an angry hiss from the snake. Thrashing in aggravation, the massive snake shook the interloper away, sending it skidding to a halt before them, fangs bared. His fur bristled fiercely as they looked on. He raised his hackles and hissed. He didn't like this. Not one bit. Anko cooed. Oh, that's just adorable. The trickster fox merely grinned and darted at her with a burst of speed, no doubt intending to pluck the headband from her head. Prepared for the assault, Anko swiped at the small kitsune with a kunai. Then all hell broke loose. A fiery inferno roared up behind her all at once, barreling into Arbok in the same instant that a stream of hardened seeds obliterating the dense foliage to her right. Trusting her partner to endure the flames, Anko spun and deflected the scattered seedlings with ease. An angry hiss informed her that Arbok had burrowed underground to escape the withering heat of the flames, while she fended off the barrage. Clearly that couldn't be all they had, there had to be more, but surely she could handle their meager tactics. Right. Wrong. A hail of saban jetted from the bushes and were hastily blocked, all save one. A single, slender needle slipped through her frantic guard to slam into her left foot. Anko stumbled in disbelief, briefly, and Zoro promptly took advantage of her momentary distraction to sink its sharp teeth into her uninjured leg. Small jaws clamped down tight around her ankle with determined fervor and held tight. Ack! The Jonin snarled down at the impudent Pokemon, annoyed to suddenly have several pounds of determined fox weighing at her right leg. Gah! Get off of me! Zoro's smile was decidedly trollish. Shit! Alright, so they surprised me, nothing major. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Hinata's assault came without warning, and surprising ferocity. The girl didn't so much dart at her as she did drop, plummeting from the treetops in a silent rush of leaves. Encumbered and distracted as she was, Anko didn't notice her until the last instant, and it was only years of honed instinct that prevented her from failing the trial at all. Her fingers just brushed the headband. Too close. Anko spun and lashed out with her encumbered leg, slamming Zora into the girl's face with enough force to jar human and Pokemon both. Stunned, Zora released its hold on her foot and went tumbling away with the girl. Not a moment later, Arbok's triumphant roar informed her that her partner had emerged, and only to overcome yet another trap, or more likely still, Charmander and Ralts. Not bad. Split them up and try to pick them off one by one. A shame it wasn't going to work. Or was it? The flames shifted and she received her fourth and final surprise of the day as Naruto barreled through the raging flames to crash headlong into her gut. He hit far harder than she'd expected him to. She supposed she had Hinata's little psychic type to thank for that. Regardless, hard enough to knock her from her feet and send both of them tumbling to the ground in a heap of tangled arms and limbs. Even startled as she was, Anko was able to fight back and get the upper hand relatively quickly, grabbing the boy's wrist and pinning them back behind his head despite the heat radiating from his body. But how had he managed to endure the heat? A flicker of burnt and discarded cream-colored fabric flashed in her peripherals. Hinata's jacket. So that was how he'd insulated himself from the flames. Ah. Clever boy. Smirking, she glowered down at her captive. Not bad. You brats almost got me. Is that it? Naruto beamed. Nope. Now, Ino. Wah. That was all she heard before Naruto vanished in a plume of smoke, leaving her holding so much empty air. Only then did the telltale ring of Ino's voice pierce her ears somewhere in the undergrowth. Mind transfer jutsu. Anko swore softly. Ah, hell. We can have nice things, interlude. Why'd you do that? What? I think it looks good on her. This. Right here. This is why we can have nice things. It was to these words that Anko Mitarashi awoke. To say that she did so would have been an understatement. Her senses snarled awake all at once as she thrashed out of her dreams, snarling obscenities and straining upon the bonds that held her. Memory crashed down on her in a bitter wave of resignation, bringing with it the stinging shame of defeat. This just wasn't fair. In hindsight, she had no one to blame but herself. She'd let her guard down, enjoyed herself just a tad too much until the tables abruptly turned on her. Violently. One moment she'd been merely showing her would-be students a thing or two, the next she'd been caught in their trap. It was a very nice trap, mind you, but it didn't excuse the fact that she'd been caught in it all the same. Perhaps if she hadn't been so eager, she wouldn't be in this situation. Perhaps she was simply losing her touch. Perhaps she secretly wanted the little brats to get the better of her. Perhaps. Who knew? Now, as she woke bound and tied to a log, nursing a horrible headache that she strongly suspected had something to do with certain Yamanaka, Anko Mitarashi could only groan. Credit where it was due, the brats had bound her rather tightly at that. It would take her a few minutes to wriggle out of this. Less to exact her revenge. Of course, it didn't help that poor Arbok found herself in a similar situation, but that would only make retribution all the more sweet when she finally seized it. Or so she thought. All right, she croaked, blinking bleary eyes against the harsh light of day. You got me. There. Happy now? Sure enough, she found the expectant faces of her students, and their Pokemon beaming back at her. Naturally, the genin and their partners took her praise in stride, looking all too proud of themselves. Poor Hinata looked as though she might faint from sheer shock. Ino's jaw hung agape, still unable to believe they'd actually succeeded in their little gambit. And Naruto. Who? Victory! Leave it to her pupil to be the loudest of the bunch. Arbok spat a menacing hiss that had the boy shrinking back out of reach. It almost made her smile. Had that been the end of it, Anko might have been content to actually let them get away with their little trick. It was not. The realization that something had gone terribly, horribly wrong came threefold. First, there was the paintbrush gripped in Naruto's hand and the bucket ill-concealed behind his back, the latter coated in bright fluorescent golden paint. Wait. Was that paint? It didn't smell like paint. Second, her face felt unseasonably wet for some inexplicable reason. Third, they were all upside down. No. Wait. That wasn't right. Why, you rotten little, what did you do to me? Horror broke like the dawn, and Anko found herself simultaneously proud and enraged all at once. Oh. Oh ho. Oh ho ho, Those little bastards. Shifting against her bonds, recognizing the blood only now rushing to her head, the Jonin struggled to speak. Conclusion? She was upside down, strapped to a log with arbok. Her face was painted with some foul substance. And what was that tag plastered to her forehead? She needn't look to know what it must have read. Perhaps she'd taught Naruto a little too well and her teachings had then rubbed off on the rest of them. No, that was absurd, surely not? Belatedly, Anko realized an awful truth. Her entire body had been rendered sticky. Was that glue? Were those feathers? As if waiting for that very cue, Naruto snickered quietly into a clenched fist. Auriayayat, he drawled happily, but you can't be mad at us. Okay? The incoherent gibberish that followed could not be called a threat, but it got its point across all the same. With that, the dam broke and the blonde toppled backward, cackling like a man, feet kicking at the sky as he clutched at his gut. Zorua and Charmander joined him a moment later. It certainly didn't help that Ino and Hinata looked to be all of a moment from joining him. Well, that settled it then. No mercy. None at all. Heedless of his peril, Naruto continued to laugh. All's fair in love and war, sensei. He certainly missed the telltale twitch that followed. Very well then. What? An awful silence fell over them. And then Anko absolutely hissed. Huh. She mused, blowing a stray strand of violet out of her hair. This is a new feeling. Pride in someone else. Unfortunately for you lot, it's. Hazel eyes narrowed to vicious slits, cold and intense upon them. Her muscles strained, finding just the right knot in the cords that bound her. A kunai slipped from her sleeve into her hand and lashed out, parting the thin rope cords like wheat from chaff. It was then, in that millisecond before she rose to her full towering height with an incensed arbok right behind, that she beheld their terrified faces. Only now did they realize the mistakes that they'd made, how badly they'd underestimated her. Not a bad look there. Perhaps she should have taken a picture. Alas, at the moment all her thoughts were overshadowed by all this unyielding rage. To their credit, her students fled quickly. It did not save them. What if Naruto has harem with Ino Hinata and Kin Pokemon? End here and thanks for watching my video till the end.